there's a lot of awareness that needs to be built on what citizens are entitled to and the fact that we pay and elect a government and what we demand. I think there is a huge hole there, which also connects to this governance index and making ourselves aware of, how to measure these things and what's important to us.
What can our electorate do to sort of push this narrative around these human development indicators, say education, quality of living, healthcare, the environment you're living in? What can an informed citizenry do? Because this is a give and take sort of relationship, right? There's a push and pull, there's a demand and supply within elections. What can the electorate do?
I think our citizenry, unfortunately, educated or not, has a very low quality, low fidelity understanding of democracy itself and of government and governance and what we are entitled to, right? For instance, I think most of the educated people can't distinguish between what a corporator delivers versus what an MLA's job is versus what an MP's job is. So a lot of MLAs will campaign, or even MPs campaign, on potholes in roads. And it's easy for the electorate to get taken in by the fact that your MP is, fixing a pothole on the road, but you've got to ask yourself, what is his or her connection to it? So I think there's a lot of awareness that needs to be built on what citizens are entitled to and the fact that we pay and elect a government and what we demand. I think there is a huge hole there, which also connects to this governance index and making ourselves aware of, how to measure these things and what's important to us. On the other side, there is also the costs. As someone who lived in the US for close to a decade, India is one of those democracies where the cost of governance, the cost of various services is completely opaque to us. Indians are not raised with that knowledge, right?
You mean by the cost of services?
Yeah. So if you look at a Western European country or the US, the citizens are aware of what it costs to educate a single child, what it costs the state to educate a single child, right? How much is going into teachers versus teacher training versus feeding the child versus the infrastructure and maintenance versus staff versus the actual cost of education, which is teacher salaries and so forth, right? So people are aware of that. And the reason that's important is because if you look at the cost of education, public education, versus, taking yourself to a private college or school, the masses of people that can't afford to go to an Ashoka or anywhere else will realize the immense service that they are getting that they wouldn't otherwise get for a few hundred rupees, for a few thousand rupees, where you will have to pay lakhs, right? But the quality of everything is opaque to us. What is the cost of everything? What is the cost of water? What is the cost of getting a glass of water, right? How much is wasted, right? So that kind of a breakdown of the granularity of democracy really is missing in our local parlance, right? So that is how you understand why certain things are important.
So you're saying it's more of an informed electorate more than an educated electorate.
Absolutely.
An aware electorate that's engaged in everyday sort of governance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think so to get there, we need to, of course, run citizen awareness campaigns, but also mobilize citizens around these things and create an outrage. It's not going to happen without that, right? You can't expect the powers that be to do that. You've got to have a disruptive force coming from the citizens themselves, make that sort of a very appealing, passionate, a glamorous issue, if you will.